The watch that built an empire. Nearly everyone can recognize a Rolex, even if they've never owned a luxury watch. That's remarkable when you consider the company wasn't the oldest, the largest, or even the first to make wristwatches. So why did this one brand become the global symbol of success? The answer wasn't simply better engineering or bigger advertising budgets. Rolex chased something far harder to earn: trust. At a time when wristwatches were often dismissed as fragile accessories, the company set out to prove they could withstand the real world. Explorers wore them on dangerous expeditions, pilots relied on them while crossing continents, divers took them deep beneath the ocean's surface. Each achievement quietly strengthened the brand's reputation, turning practical success into lasting prestige. Before long, a Rolex wasn't just telling the time, it was saying something about the person wearing it. Yet none of those accomplishments would have been possible without one breakthrough that changed everything. Long before waiting lists, celebrity collectors, and record-breaking auctions, Rolex introduced a practical invention that transformed wristwatches forever and laid the foundation for every legendary model that followed. Oyster, the watch that changed everything. Rolex didn't become legendary because it made the most complicated watch. It became legendary because it solved a problem most people had simply accepted. In the 1920s, wristwatches were widely seen as fragile, easily ruined by dust, moisture, and everyday life. Rolex believed they could be trusted instead. Then came the Oyster, the world's first commercially successful waterproof wristwatch, built around a tightly sealed case that challenged everything people thought a watch could survive. But invention alone wasn't enough. The world needed proof. In 1927, British swimmer Mercedes Gleitze wore an Oyster during her attempt to swim across the English Channel. She never completed the crossing, yet after hours in freezing water, the watch was still ticking. That was the story people remembered. Newspapers across Britain reported the feat, and Rolex displayed the Oyster inside aquarium-like shop windows, inviting passers-by to judge its waterproof design for themselves. It worked. The Oyster became far more than a successful product. It became the foundation of Rolex's reputation for reliability. Even today, nearly every modern Rolex is built on that same idea: a sealed case designed to keep the outside world where it belongs. Everything that followed started here. Datejust and Oyster Perpetual, everyday Rolex. A Rolex doesn't have to be rare or covered in diamonds to become iconic. Some of the brand's most influential watches earned that reputation simply by being there, day after day, year after year. That philosophy began with the Oyster Perpetual, which combined the waterproof Oyster case with Rolex's self-winding perpetual movement. Instead of stopping every morning to wind a watch, owners simply went about their lives while it quietly kept ticking. It felt almost effortless. Then, in 1945, Rolex introduced the Datejust and quietly changed everyday watchmaking once again. It became the first self-winding chronometer wristwatch with a date that automatically changed in a window at midnight. To celebrate the launch, Rolex paired it with the elegant Jubilee bracelet, whose 5-piece links made the watch instantly recognizable while adding remarkable comfort. None of those innovations seemed revolutionary on their own. Together, they created a watch people could trust through ordinary days and life's biggest milestones alike. Promotions, weddings, anniversaries, and family celebrations all found a place for the Datejust. That lasting appeal explains why the Oyster Perpetual and Datejust remain two of Rolex's defining collections. Countless brands have borrowed the formula ever since, proving that true luxury isn't always about standing out. Sometimes it's about getting everything exactly right. Explorer and Explorer II, built for adventure. Some watches are designed for boardrooms. Rolex built these for places where getting home wasn't guaranteed. In 1953, the world watched as climbers battled freezing winds and dangerously thin air to reach the summit of Mount Everest for the first confirmed time. That historic achievement became forever linked with the Rolex Explorer, giving the watch an adventurous reputation that still endures today. Whether every detail unfolded exactly that way almost didn't matter. People believed the Explorer belonged on the world's highest mountain, and that belief became part of Rolex history. Rather than loading the watch with extra features, Rolex focused on absolute clarity. Its clean dial was easy to read at a glance, even when harsh conditions left little room for mistakes. Years later, Rolex expanded the idea with the Explorer II, built for cave explorers and polar researchers who could spend days without seeing the sun. Most people never lose track of day and night. Deep underground, explorers sometimes do. Its distinctive 24-hour hand solved that unusual problem with elegant simplicity. These watches weren't created to impress strangers. They were built to earn trust where mistakes carried real consequences. Even today, the Explorer and Explorer II remain symbols of quiet confidence, proving that true luxury isn't about having more. It's about knowing your watch will be ready whenever you need it. Submariner and Sea Dweller, masters of the ocean. Long before luxury watches became status symbols, one Rolex was built for a world most people would never see. In 1953, the Submariner arrived as professional diving, pushed into deeper, more dangerous waters. Its clear dial, rotating bezel, and dependable waterproof construction gave divers a tool they could trust when every minute beneath the surface mattered. Then, something unexpected happened. The Submariner appeared on the wrist of James Bond, transforming a professional diving instrument into one of the world's most recognizable luxury watches. Almost overnight, the same watch trusted by divers became the one millions dreamed of wearing, but the ocean kept demanding more. Divers soon encountered another problem. During long saturation dives, tiny helium molecules could slip inside a watch and build pressure during decompression. Rolex answered with the Sea Dweller, introducing a helium escape valve that safely released the trapped gas without sacrificing the watch's waterproof seal. It worked. Years later, the Deepsea pushed those limits even further, engineered to withstand crushing pressures thousands of meters below the surface. These weren't marketing exercises. They solved real problems in one of the harshest environments on Earth. That relentless pursuit of practical innovation reshaped the entire dive watch industry. Today, nearly every modern dive watch reflects ideas the Submariner pioneered, proving Rolex didn't simply build an icon. It created the standard everyone else has spent decades chasing. GMT-Master and Sky Dweller, watches for travelers. The jet age was shrinking the world, but it created a new challenge. Pilots could cross multiple time zones in a single journey, making it surprisingly easy to lose track of home time. Rolex answered with the GMT-Master, developed alongside Pan American World Airways for the airline's long-haul cruise. Its extra Greenwich Mean Time hand let pilots read 2 time zones at a glance, making international navigation far simpler. The idea caught on quickly. Before long, collectors weren't just asking for a GMT-Master, they were asking for a Pepsi, a Batman, or a root beer, nicknames inspired by the watch's colorful bezels that became legendary in their own right. Decades later, Rolex turned its attention from professional pilots to frequent travelers with the Sky Dweller. It did more than display a second time zone. It also featured an annual calendar that automatically adjusted for months with 30 or 31 days. Rolex wanted all that complexity to disappear once the watch was on your wrist. The ring command bezel made that possible, letting wearers rotate the bezel itself to choose which function the crown would adjust. It was an elegant solution to a complicated problem. Together, the GMT-Master and Sky Dweller transformed travel watches from specialist instruments into symbols of exploration, proving that wherever people journeyed, Rolex was ready to go with them. Daytona, the collector's dream. No Rolex has a stranger success story than the Daytona. When it first appeared, the racing chronograph struggled to find buyers. Named after Florida's famous Daytona racetrack, it was built for drivers who needed precise timing on the circuit, yet collectors largely ignored it, leaving many watches sitting untouched in display cases. Then, everything changed. Actor and racing enthusiast Paul Newman began wearing a Daytona with an unusual dial. At the time, it looked like just another watch. Few people could have guessed it would become one of the most sought-after collectibles in watchmaking history. Decades later, Newman's own Daytona sold for more than $17 million at auction. The room erupted, headlines spread around the world, and the model became a legend almost overnight. Then, demand exploded. Waiting lists stretched for years, auction records kept falling, and prices climbed beyond what many thought possible. Ironically, the watch that once gathered dust became the one collectors chased across the globe. Today, people aren't just buying a Daytona, they're buying one of watchmaking's greatest stories. It represents rarity, history, celebrity, and perfect timing in one remarkable package. Few luxury watches have rewritten their own reputation so completely. The world didn't change the Daytona. It finally recognized what had been there all along. Every new release still sparks worldwide excitement, while authorized dealers receive far more requests than watches. Sometimes, the greatest legends don't arrive too early. They simply wait for everyone else to catch up. The modern Rolex family. Not everyone dreams of owning the same Rolex, and that's exactly the point. As the company grew, it stopped building watches for one type of customer and began creating collections for entirely different lifestyles. The Yacht-Master offered a more refined life on the water, blending nautical inspiration with everyday luxury. The Air King honored aviation, reflecting Rolex's long relationship with pioneering pilots through a clean, highly legible design. Scientists and engineers found their companion in the Milgauss, built to withstand powerful magnetic fields and proving Rolex could solve problems far beyond mountains and oceans. Those seeking timeless elegance first turned to the Cellini before the 1908 carried that tradition into a new generation, celebrating the company's earliest years with a classic dress watch design. At the opposite end of the spectrum, the Pearlmaster embraced precious metals and gemstones for buyers who wanted craftsmanship with unmistakable glamour. None of these collections became household names like the Submariner or Daytona. They didn't need to. Each served a different purpose while sharing the same commitment to reliability, craftsmanship, and enduring design. Together, they reveal something many people overlook about Rolex. Its greatest strength isn't one legendary watch, it's the ability to build a watch for almost every ambition, profession, and way of life, without ever losing the identity that made the brand famous in the first place. Why Rolex still dominates. For more than a century, Rolex has protected its reputation by controlling almost everything behind the dial. Instead of relying heavily on outside suppliers, the company makes most of its own movements, cases, bracelets, and even many of the materials it uses. Vertical integration gives Rolex remarkable consistency, while deliberately measured production helps preserve the standards collectors expect. Every watch must meet strict chronometer standards before leaving the factory, reinforcing a reputation for precision that enthusiasts trust. Precision explains only part of the story. The real obsession grew from something far harder to manufacture: trust. Demand consistently exceeds supply, creating waiting lists that make ownership feel like an achievement rather than a purchase. Over time, many models have held or even increased their value, encouraging buyers to see them as long-term investments as well as personal milestones. Together, craftsmanship, scarcity, and confidence have shaped generations of enthusiasts. Parents pass them to children, collectors chase forgotten references, first-time buyers celebrate promotions with one meaningful purchase. Few brands become part of people's life stories, yet Rolex remains different. One day it's timing an important business meeting, the next it's crossing an ocean, celebrating a promotion, or becoming a family heirloom. The watch on someone's wrist often marks an achievement, but the story behind it is what gives it lasting power. More than a luxury watch, Rolex became something few brands ever achieve, a symbol of earned trust passed from one generation to the next.